You weren't on a were you on a point of order, Mr. Garretson? I'll let you finish your point of order.
I was supplementing the point of order that had been previously raised.
He was back to his speech.
That's fine. If Miss Vecchio wants to come in,
go ahead. Go ahead, Miss Vecchio.
With all due respect, and Mr. Chair, you know I have the greatest respect for you, but there is the opportunity for us to question the ruling of the chair. So thank you, Mr. Garretson, for your input. But if the members of the committee on the majority did not agree, we can vote down the decision and go that forward as well. So that's an option. But please, 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 no more personal attacks. Thank you.
The entire year since the Deputy Prime Minister announced the reinstatement of the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund here on the shores of Lake Simcoe. And we're still waiting. After years of conservative investment, the Liberals canceled the cleanup fund in 2017, putting Lake Simcoe at risk.
Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to swindle a naive Prime Minister of $20 to $200 million of other people's money. Because that's exactly what Gateway Casinos has just done. They can't get money from anyone. In fact, for 10 years, their owner tried to sell the company, but nobody would buy. Well, we have new job losses of 2,000 people in the energy sector out west, 500 out east, 1 million Canadians without paychecks since the pandemic. Why is he throwing away our money in this jackpot for casino insiders?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we recognize that Canadians across the country are hurting because of this pandemic. We created many different mechanisms to support them, whether it was the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the wage subsidy, or the LEAF program, which is the large employers' enterprise funding. We've actually ensured that that money is delivered independently to organizations that qualify for it, and it is a long-term, it is a loan rather than any sort of grant of money. These are things that we've put to make sure that our economy comes roaring back. We will stay focused on the pandemic and on supporting Canadians through this pandemic.
Of which I was a part in 2006, when we created a special committee to pass anti-corruption legislation after the sponsorship scandal. Second example would be the Canada-China Committee, which our leader initiated. These kinds of committees allow parliamentarians to zero in on a very narrow but important subject, while allowing all the other permanent committees to continue to do their work. The Liberals claim that the WE scandal could distract Parliament from the pandemic response. This is a perfect solution to that. We propose that the Finance Committee do finance work, that the Ethics Committee continue its review of privacy legislation, that all the other committees do the policy work that they are set up to do, while a new and temporary committee that is devoted to fighting corruption be established to get to the truth in the WE scandal.
Mr. Speaker, when most people think about the future of energy, they will refer to wind farms, geothermal, solar, but far too often we forget about the power reclaimed through energy efficiency. Let us also not ignore the fact that some will try to make us believe that nuclear energy can still be considered clean, safe, and reliable. The reality is that it's pointless of dreaming of a greener future if we're not investing massively today on how to preserve our energy, reducing demand. My question is to the Minister of Energy Resources. How much precisely is the government projected to invest to intensify energy efficiency in comparison to the upcoming investment to increase Canada's reliance on nuclear power?
Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly, energy efficiency is a critical piece of moving forward with an effective climate plan. It's also an opportunity for us to think about how we create jobs and economic opportunity for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. It is part of a plan that will obviously need to include a focus on renewable energy, how we actually reduce emissions in all sectors across the country. Certainly, the announcement today by the Prime Minister and Premier Ford with respect to zero-emission vehicle manufacturing is a critical piece of that plan as well. We will be moving forward to address all of those issues.
I need a washroom break, to be honest with you. So I'm going to suspend for about 8 minutes.
I'd be happy to take the chair, Vice Chair.
No, we will suspend. We will suspend for 8 minutes.
I don't mind.
And come back to the next speaker. I know you don't mind, but I remember one time when my lights went out, Pierre. So I am going to have to get further advice on this to find out where we're really at, technically, with some of the clerks. So with that, I'm suspending the meeting until further notice.
Mr. Chair, point of order. 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 You point of order, Chair. Point of order.
Suspended.
Point of order. You do not have authorization to shut down the meeting. You do not have majority to do that.
I have the authorization.
You cannot.
Pierre, I'm not going to argue with you. I have the authorization to suspend the meeting, and I am suspending the meeting.
Have the courage to hold a vote.
I am suspending the meeting, and when we deal with this motion, Pierre, we will deal with it properly.
Have the courage to hold a vote.
So the
Don't
meeting
shut us down.
The meeting is suspended.
No, you can't shut us down. The meeting goes on without you. I will be happy to take on the chair. The meeting will continue going on, and I will begin by taking a list. Does anybody wish to be on the list in order to speak?
Madam Clerk,
do we have any speakers?
I'm ordering it suspended.
I will.
I'm looking at the status.
Ms. Jensen, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, I'm very, very concerned about
you do not. No, you do not have the floor, Ms. Jensen. I am the chair. I ordered the meeting be suspended.
Mr. Easter, you're out of order. You are out of order. You are out of order. You've removed yourself from the meeting.
As I sort out that this is.
Is because we are spending an unprecedented amount of money, and we will need to spend that money to get people through this. We have to be able to say to the Canadian people, this money was spent to help you, to help students, to help small business, not to help friends of the Liberal Party. And I'm very surprised my honourable colleagues in the Conservative Party did not mention David McNaughton as part of the study. Now, David McNaughton found guilty, top Liberal insider trying to bring Palantir, one of the creepiest companies on the planet, massive data surveillance company run by an extreme right. Oh, maybe that's why they didn't want to deal with it, because Peter Thiel is an extreme right-wing guy. But he got invited right into the Deputy Prime Minister's office.
Unanimous consent.
Mr. Chair, sorry, point of order. Point of order.
Yes, there is.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Well, let's hear your point of order.
I'm offering a friendly amendment which can get us onto the pre-budget consultation motion within minutes.
That wasn't the members' question.
Well, if you're going to violate the process here, then no, you can't get unanimous consent to violate the process.
I am not violating the process.
You are
but
indeed.
you are being disruptive.
And
Mr. Fraser asked if there was unanimous consent.
Our plan, we will always be there for them.
Mr. Speaker, the entire WE scandal was based on trying to help students, and instead of helping students, this government helped their close friends at WE. And now it's become very clear, while students are struggling, while they're afraid, while they're worried, while they can't pay their bills, while they're not sure if they're going to be able to find a job, this government would rather risk plunging our country into an election than helping students. So were they just empty words, as I said, when the Prime Minister promised to help students, or will the Prime Minister get to work and actually help those in need?
Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, not only have we pledged to help students, but we have helped students. Students have been at the heart of the challenges faced by this pandemic, so we announced a comprehensive $9 billion plan to support them, including the Canada Emergency Student Benefit, which provided direct financial support to over 700,000 students and recent grads. We created jobs, placements, and training opportunities, including over 84,000 Canada Summer Jobs jobs, up to 40,000 student work placements, an additional 9,500 opportunities through the Youth Employment and Skills Strategy, and we've doubled the Canada Student Grants. We will continue to be there for our students all through the country.
The Standing Committee on Health commence a study on the emergency situation facing Canadians in light of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that this study evaluate, review, and examine all issues relevant to this situation.
Show me the money.
Gives rise to great suspicion about what it is that he is hiding. First, we had the WE scandal, then the WE cover-up, then the WE prorogation, and then today, in order to try and cover it all up again, we had his threat of a WE-lection. The last thing we need right now is a WE-lection. We need focus on the pandemic. Canadians are suffering. Millions are unemployed. Our jobless rate is the highest in the G7. Our deficit the biggest in the G20. And instead of working on those problems, this committee
Point of order, Mr.
is
Chair.
playing games about to try and prevent the truth from coming out in the
Point
WE
of order from Mr. Fregaskatis.
The member ought to know as finance critic, the debt to GDP ratio is 48%, which comparably is extremely low. I just want the record to reflect the facts, Mr. Chair.
I don't
As a committee, I think we are deserved that.
That's not a point of order. Back to you, Mr. Poilievre.
The deficit is the largest in the G20 this year. It is true that past governments have bequeathed good, solid financial health to this prime minister, but he is working with great haste to burn all of those riches and leave the present generation, forget future ones, empty-handed. But back to my original point. What the hell is this government hiding? If they're prepared to shut the parliament down.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Poilievre, I'm going to your point of order, Mr. Fraser, but relevance to the sub-amendment, if I could hear Mr. Poilievre. What's your point of order, Mr. Fraser?
My point of order is on the use of unparliamentary language. I think the honourable member knows the language he's using to make his point. While it may increase the number of people who watch his YouTube video, is not appropriate when we're sitting in a parliamentary setting. Thank you.
Valid point. Go ahead, Mr. Poilievre.
Well, Mr. Speaker, no one wants to go there, but the reality is that the government is going to some incredible lengths to hide some ugly truths. If the Prime Minister was not afraid of what could come out in this scandal, he wouldn't have crippled 3 parliamentary committees with an endless stream of speeches about everything ranging from Greek philosophers to cartoon characters in order to burn up committee time and prevent us from getting to motions that would release unredacted documents to the public. He wouldn't have shut Parliament for 6 weeks, and nor would he have threatened an election today. You know, it's ironic that today in the House of Commons, in a related motion, Mr. Chair, the Prime Minister said he would call an election if a committee looked into the WE scandal. Now, he could not name a single solitary policy objective which the opposition is hindering. So clearly, this election threat has nothing to do with protecting Canadians in the pandemic, but everything to do with protecting him from accountability. So, I would ask members to quickly adopt the motion from my point of privilege so that we can get the unredacted documents.
Mr. Poilievre, I do hate to interrupt you, but we're not on your motion. We're on the sub-amendment to the amendment. I can't read it to to the sub amendment to the amendment to the motion.
Right, that's right.
And so we are, Mr. Chair, we are speaking on the sub amendment now. So it'd be nice to have a little close relevance to that.
You can't comment on the sub amendment to the sub amendment to the amendment to the motion if you don't talk about the emotion.
Well, you weren't even on the motion.
You can't talk about a branch or a leaf if you don't talk about the tree.
The trouble is you weren't talking about the tree, Pierre.
Actually, I was right in the root of the tree. And I'm trying to get to the root of this scandal.
I tell you, the trees are tall when you're in the clouds.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it has some very deep roots that go deep into ground.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to expose those roots. What is it, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chair, that the government is trying to hide in all this? Why would they go to such great lengths if there was nothing here? One can only imagine that the Prime Minister is waking up at 2 a.m. in cold sweats thinking about what might come out in this scandal, and that's why he has sent his MPs into this committee to filibuster for 20 hours when we should be talking about pre-budget consultations.
Point of order.
Who's the point? Mr. Fragiskatis.
Yes, in the interest of correcting the record, the member talked about the deficit. He forgot to mention that Canada has provided as much fiscal support for the economic recovery.
This is a point of order. That's not a point of order, Mr. Fragiskatis. Mr. Poilievre.
No country has done more. I'm just quoting directly from where the member took
point
his
of order. That's
point of order.
Not a point of order,
Mr.
Fragiskatis. Who else said a point of order? Mr. Julian?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask all members to respect members who are speaking. I don't think these interruptions are helpful or dignified at the Finance Committee.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I am here in the room where the interpreters are working. They're doing a great job, and when people are yelling like that, it's impossible for them to interpret. And so for people who only speak French, they can't follow along in these debates, and so I'd ask people to be more respectful. Thank you.
Mr. St. Marie, back to Mr. Poilievre, and a couple of points have been noted by Mr. Julian and Mr. St. Marie. Go ahead, Mr. Poilievre.
This is a scandal in which the Prime Minister's family accepted $500,000, and then the Prime Minister turned around and gave the group that provided those funds $500 million. That's a major Canadian scandal, and let me speak directly to him when I say Conservatives will not relent until the truth comes out in this scandal. He can threaten, he can bully, he can shut things down, but at the end of the day, we will continue to do our jobs until we expose the truth. So let's get busy and pass this motion so we can see the unredacted documents, the unvarnished truth, and let Canadians judge accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. On to Mr. Julian. Peter Julian, the floor is yours. You just stepped away, I know, from the Mr. Poilievre has completed. You're next on the list, Mr.
Thank
Julian.
you,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. I'm not going to speak for long because I believe we need to go immediately to these votes with the sub-amendment, the amendment, and stop the filibuster. But I am profoundly disturbed by the Prime Minister basically doing away with pre-budget hearings. He threatened an election, and of course that would have meant no pre-budget hearings at all. So I think to reestablish our responsibility, we need to vote now on the sub-amendment, on the amendment, and on the motion of privilege, and move on from there. That's our responsibility as a Finance Committee, and then we can have discussion around committee.